I think our barriers are honestly self-inflicted. I think that when you really want to achieve something, the question is, what are you willing to do? What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to sacrifice? How hard are you willing to work? And how creative can you be in accomplishing your goals?
U.S. entrepreneurial population doesn't quite look like the U.S. general population. You know, it's still overwhelmingly white, overwhelmingly male.
So in the research that we've done, we've found there's a variety of factors, from access to capital, to policy constraints, to implicit bias. I think the reality is that the undergirding is really tied to systemic racism and sexism. If you look at the research that's been done by Kaufman and many others, there are clear, explicit additional costs attributed to women and entrepreneurs of color when they take out debt. They are less applicable and eligible when it looks at venture capital. And so I do think that there's this ongoing belief, it's not intentional, that women and entrepreneurs of color are not as talented, that they are not as capable, they cannot be as profitable. And part of that is just due to general pattern recognition. As a finance person, as a banker, you look at underwriting criterion for elements of consistency, and if you're not part of that data set, or you've had barriers or hurdles earlier of lower credit score, lack of financial institutions in your neighborhood, it's hard to then outweigh those negative statistics, and I would say the same exists when it comes to venture capital.
And I think that's where it gets difficult to solve. We definitely need more diverse investors at the table, and that starts at the angel level and goes all the way up to some of the larger VC funds. We definitely need more mentorship in terms of helping people get into the door and more access into those rooms. And then certainly we need more preparation on the part of the entrepreneurs in terms of getting them better prepared and getting them more help and helping them establish the business models that are investable and strong and good business models.
As it turns out, many entrepreneurs have had successful entrepreneurs in their background. You know, it wasn't this world-beating company, but it was a large store, in their community, or a manufacturing business, or others, like a big restaurant, where they worked. So those skills and aptitudes are often present in a family, sort of this invisible capital that they've inherited, and then is a resource that they use later. So more active mentorship by local business owners and other small businesses to others who just don't have, because that knowledge has really been closely held.
Education was something that I lacked when I made the decision to start my business. I thought I knew what I was doing, and I learned very quickly that I had no idea what I was doing. And then there was just not a lot of resources available in the way that I needed them to be available. A lot of the stuff that I know now, I had to learn the hard way. I had to go through trial and error. I had to just really experience things. I didn't have that mentorship that's so important in entrepreneurship. I didn't have access to capital, and sometimes I still don't have access to capital.
Black founders, Latino founders are much more likely to use things like credit cards, personal credit cards, than lines of business credit. This is, of course, much more expensive, much riskier.
I think there has been some progress. I think there's tons of venture capital firms like SoGal and Chloe Capital that have popped up with a very specific focus on women. I think there's been a ton of research by Catherine Finney and Digital Undivided and others around what is the economic value of entrepreneurs of color. So I think there's been movement. I think the reality, though, is proportionally, we're still way off. So if you think about access to loans, African American women are 37 times more to be rejected. Latino women are 27 times more, and Asian American women are almost 20 times more. And that's just purely based on gender bias, recognizing that it was just in the 70s, which is not that long ago, that women could not even get a bank loan unless their husbands co-signed. So we are seeing progress, but I'm hoping that we get a J-curve soon as the demographics of the country and our competitiveness begins to change.
The efforts that venture capital is taking right now to build more diverse portfolios isn't working. I think they definitely want more diverse portfolios. I don't think they're willing to change the process to get them. They have to start expanding their networks. They have to change the systems in which they're attracting people to the door. I think they need to start looking at who are their scouts and where is their deal flow coming from. They have to change the way that they're having conversations in the room and change the structure of the pitch. Because it doesn't work in its current iteration. So we're working a lot with various funds to start to shift that model and look at, if we were to start from scratch and look at what should this whole process be like from start to finish, how will that actually change the face of the funded entrepreneur?
Having more women, having more people of color, having more veterans run businesses, it completely changes the landscape of the economy in which those businesses operate.
Because people solve problems that they understand, and that affect people that they know. So for me, that's the real, that's the real goal for what we're doing. We say developing a new generation of young men of color with entrepreneurial mindsets, and it's about that critical mass. That critical mass of leaders to develop an ecosystem who then can start going out and solving even bigger problems.
If they had been invested in parity to their white male peers, we would have had 1 million more jobs and $300 billion more contribution to GDP. And so I think that hopefully people are beginning to catch on with this data set that says the underinvestment of these individuals actually creates an economic peril for us as a country, because we're missing out on direct contribution to GDP, which is extremely important in this world of globalization and massive competitiveness, but we're also missing out on the quality of life of allowing individuals to be able to recognize their own destiny and have an array and diversity of products and services that cater to a wide swath of communities.
If you have an idea and you have the ability to be persuasive enough that there actually is more money out there than ever, it's not always in banks, but in private equity firms and other sources of people who are really actually very interested in supporting and helping find the resources that are needed for women of color, women in particular, and also young men to find an opportunity to be able to start their own business.